After the divided reception to The Color Purple, Spielberg's next film, at least at first, wasn't meant to be another serious project. He came on board as a producer for a film that was to be helmed by his idol, David Lean, a film entitled Empire of the Sun. It was based on the book of the same name by J.G. Ballard. But after Lean dropped out due to feeling the subject matter didn't suit a film, it was Spielberg who stepped in to take over the project. With Spielberg being an enormous fan of David Lean's epics like Lawrence of Arabia and Bridge on the River Kwai, Empire of the Sun feels almost like a tribute to those films, trying to capture a very personal story set against the backdrop of a grand-scale epic. And honestly, it's one of Spielberg's best films, and a strong candidate for his most underrated. I say underrated because not only did this film do kind of bad at the box office, with middle-of-the-road reviews to boot, but even today it remains somewhat forgotten among Spielberg's filmography. The most notable thing about it is that this was Christian Bale's film debut. That's right. That Christian Bale, before he was turning himself into a skeleton, getting jacked like no one's business, or gaining weight with the help of some makeup. His most radical transformation was turning himself into a 13-year-old boy. No, not really, although according to IMDb trivia, Bale would do run-ups and jumping jacks prior to shooting to give him an appropriately tired and exasperated performance, so perhaps method acting has always been with him, just a tiny bit less extreme. Anyways, aside from that little factoid, the film remains unknown by large swaths of the public, and even among most film fans, which is unfortunate, because it's really something special. The plot is not based on, but definitely inspired by the real life of author J.G. Ballard, who grew up in an imperial Japanese prison camp as a kid, which would in turn inspire his novel Empire of the Sun. Protagonist Jamie Jim Graham is a rich, privileged British boy living in Shanghai during World War II. His pastimes include marveling at airplanes and using his imagination to make toy versions of them fly, blissfully unaware of the war that rages just outside his doorstep. That is until the Pearl Harbor attack and the subsequent invasion of the city by the Imperial Japanese Army. In the chaos, Jim is separated from his parents and left stranded. Now all alone and without any survival skills to boot, he must grow up quickly and rely on the kindness and skills of others in order to survive the city, and then later on a prison camp. Let's talk about easily the film's biggest strength, the cinematography. Oh my god. This is the last film that Spielberg had Alain Daviau photograph, and while it's a shame they never worked together again, goddamn if this isn't a good way to go out. I can think of only one other Spielberg film that outmatches this in visuals, and we'll get to that soon, but this film puts up a strong argument. This is one of the most beautiful looking movies, period. The shots emphasize the grand-scale landscapes alongside the general feel of wonder and discovery alongside it. Any shot with fire, explosions, and especially the sun is a masterwork. But the film doesn't just look beautiful. Through Spielberg's evolving skills as a filmmaker, his visual storytelling is brought to the forefront here, with shots that emphasize the more spiritual and thematic aspects of the film. No better example of this than showing a shot that at first I kind of glanced over, but the video Most Beautiful Shots in Movie History Part 2 brought to my attention. It's this one, where Jim walks with a look of amazement in his eyes, the sparks from the welding tool slowly covering him in a warm, fiery glow. Not only is it beautiful, it perfectly encapsulates what this movie is about. Jim is just a boy, and he sees the world through the eyes of a boy. War and nationality is just a curious pastime to him, not something he sees with great nuance or depth. But this experience will forge him into something else, someone else. It will be equal parts crushing and beautiful. On the topic of Jim, I can't emphasize just how great of a debut this is for Christian Bale. The Jim at the beginning of the film and at the end are entirely different, and Bale pulls off the transformation with stride. Surrounding him is an excellent supporting cast, like Basie, played by a trying to be subtle for once John Malkovich. There's also the other adults in the camp, like the doctor that tries to give Jim an education, and captured US soldiers that are like the sly uncles that your parents didn't want you to talk to. Also, shout out to the effects in the film. In the time before CGI and green screen were so prevalent, real explosions were used, radio-controlled plane models were flown, and entire on-location sets were found, built, and populated by hundreds of extras, backlit against the glorious real-life sun. Makes this film feel so alive and rich in detail. Rounding out the movie is the always reliable John Williams with one of his more underrated scores. The main theme for the film is a classic Welsh song called Suogan, but in Williams' hands the lullaby becomes deeply personal, sad, and operatic. There's also the tracks Jim's New Life and another cover, Exultate Justi, that deserves special mention. They emit the typical wanderlust that's expected from Williams, while also being more attuned to this grander yet still personal story. If I had to nitpick on problems with the entire film, I'd guess I'll say that the first half is a bit boring, and once they get to the prison camp, the movie officially gets good. All in all, it's a damn shame that Empire of the Sun isn't talked about more. In a way, I do understand why. In terms of wonder and amazement, E.T. has that locked down. In terms of World War II films, Saving Private Ryan is the clear choice. And in terms of a serious drama, Schindler's List is Well, I'll tell you soon. But even with all that, and with this film's weaknesses, the movie still deserves a lot of love. It's one of the most visually beautiful films ever. The characters are a ton of fun, and it's arguably Spielberg's most artful movie, one that lets its symbolism and motifs do the talking instead of the plot or the dialogue. It's not perfect, but it's a gorgeous, touching movie that is low-key one of his very best.